Hi, and welcome to Jim's Friday Freakout. Today, we're taking a second look at urban legends. So it's Urban Legends Part 2. Da-da-da, dun-dun-dun, da-da-da, da-da. Just imagine if this was the most important thing you did all day. Okay, an urban legend is defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary as an often lurid story or anecdote that is based on hearsay, but widely accepted as true. All right, so let's take this apart a little bit. I think that's a very effective definition, but there are two words in this term, urban and legend. Now, in terms of legends, there's no question that Merriam-Webster hit the nail on the head. Hearsay, widely accepted as true. So we're certainly going to give them that one. But as to the urban part, well, that's where urban legends get a little more shaky. For example, here's a graphic from a story run by the BBC, a very reliable source of information on urban legends. Anybody else notice about this photograph? And I'm not just talking about the poorly photoshopped ghostly figure in the foreground. It's not real urban, is it? No, many urban legends are not urban. Maybe part of the reason is that for urban legends to work, you need to be in a secret place with privacy so that people kind of feel like they can relate to it, but there aren't enough people there to actually act as witnesses. So when it comes to urban legends, let's say they themselves are a half-truth. But let's get to the first one, the hook. Okay, the heart of the urban legend of the hook is this story. A couple out on a date goes to a secluded area and parks the car so they can make out. While they are there, a news bulletin comes on the radio saying that a mental patient who is a violent criminal has just escaped and people should be on the lookout. The girl becomes terrified and asks the boy to take her home. The boy doesn't want to end their date, so they argue, and finally, in anger, the boy gives in to her. He turns on the car and peels out. When they get back to the girl's house, he goes around to open the passenger door, and there is a detached hook hanging from the car door. But is there any truth to this? Well, when it comes to deranged killers preying on couples in parked cars, America, I'm sad to say, has a considerable history of this. In the 1970s, there was the son of Sam, David Berkowitz, who in New York City killed and injured several couples parked in cars by shooting them. Going into the previous decade, in 1968, in San Francisco, there was someone who became known as the Zodiac Killer. The reason we're looking at a police artist sketch here instead of an actual photograph is that, unlike David Berkowitz, the Zodiac Killer was never caught. And the reason he got his name was that he wrote a letter to, I believe, the newspaper, taunting the police, daring them to catch him, and making some obscure and deranged references to the zodiac, to astrological signs. But the story that is true, that is most closely associated in all the research I did with the story of the hook, is the Texarkana Phantom Killer. This was in Texarkana on the Texas and Arkansas border. Interestingly, part of the town is in Texas and part of it is in Arkansas, and the state line runs down the middle of the post office and the middle of the courthouse, which made law enforcement a little more difficult, especially in an emergency like this. Several people, many of them some of them parked in cars, but not all, were murdered in Texarkana around 1946. The picture we're seeing here, the man third from the left, is Ewell Sweeney, who is the person who is believed to have committed the crime. And when I say believed, to say he's the one in the most authoritative book on the subject who is kind of pointed to as the killer. And people also point out that when Ewell Sweeney went to prison for a lesser charge, the Texarkana Phantom Killer murders stopped. However, none of the serial killers we've just mentioned here had a hook for a hand. That hasn't stopped the story from gaining wide circulation. And after all, there are people who, due to injuries in war, in industrial accidents, etc., who have lost their hands and had them replaced by hooks. And these people have gone on to live long and productive lives. However, apart from Captain Hook in the Peter Pan stories, I haven't heard of any where the hook is sharpened in a way that would be helpful for someone who is a serial killer. But the story is spread far and wide. Here's a story. Now, you look up on the top of this graphic I've included here. It says TBS.net, TBS News. Oh, Turner Broadcast System. No. This is the Business Standard of India. covering the story of the legend of the Hook Man. Now, this India publication places it, as they put it, Pennsylvania, USA. I haven't found any other supporting stories that claim that it happens in the same place. But here's the rather bizarre graphic that the Business Standard of India included with the story. There are a number of problems with this. First of all, why would the Hook Man be dressed like Tom Jones at a concert in 1969? Second of all, you'll notice that the figure they've included here has a hook, but he also has two perfectly functioning hands. So it kind of undercuts the whole story, not to mention the fact that he's not attacking a couple in a car. He's going after a single man, apparently in a bar. So I'm thinking this is just a slightly related graphic that they had laying around. They decided to stick on the story. At any rate, the verdict on the story of the hook, and there is no evidence to support this claim. And so we're going to need to give this story the hook. Right, Daffy? All right. Next story, Bubble Yum. Bubble Yum is a product that first created by the Lifesavers Company. It was innovative because it was a bubble gum that didn't come out of the package really hard and stiff. It was soft right from the get-go, so you could be blowing bubbles in mere seconds. It didn't put you through all that unpleasant effort of having to actually chew your bubble gum. So people tried to come up with reasons, and by people I say the kids who were the primary consumers of this product, came up with reasons why it was so soft. And for some reason, the story that they came up with was that bubblegum contains spider eggs. Other stories said they included spider webs. Others said they included a product that causes cancer. And they'd be, oh, I knew a kid who chewed it and he died of cancer. I knew someone who fell asleep with it in their mouth and then baby spiders hatched in their mouth. All right. So around 1977, when these rumors went into wider circulation, especially in the New York area, come on, New York kids, Lifesavers decided to be proactive about it. Instead of just remaining quiet, ignoring the rumor and hoping it would go away, they spent $100,000 by placing full-page ads in 30 local newspapers in the New York area, refuting the claim, and it worked. As the president of Lifesavers said at the time, it was like trying to punch air, trying to refute a rumor, and that actually sheds a lot of light on a lot of things we've seen in the media lately. Somebody starts a rumor, and a rumor takes on a life of its own, and it's hard for people to refute it because the source of the rumor is very difficult to locate or confront. Maybe that's especially true when it's a rumor being spread around by school kids. At any rate, Lifesavers' effort was ultimately successful, and the brand has survived. Lifesavers Inc. was bought by Nabisco in the 1980s, and then in 2000, Nabisco sold the Bubble Yum brand to Hershey's, who continues to make it today. Now, interestingly, this is not the same Lifesavers Inc. that is Lifesavers Inc. That's a company that makes CPR products and does CPR trainings. There must have been some sort of like really serious litigation that went on there. Two different companies, completely different lines of work, and as far as I can see, exactly the same name. At any rate, Hershey's has spiced up the brand by creating a mascot for Bubble Yum, Floyd D. Duck, which strikes me as a really strange one. Okay, Floyd looks like a pretty hip, cool duck. He's got just the requisite amount of aggressiveness in his eyes without looking truly dangerous. He's got a nose ring. But here he is like splashing through what appears to be some of the product. I've never seen bubblegum splash in any way. His spiked mohawk seems to be made of bubblegum. Are we supposed to eat his mohawk? But perhaps to me, what's most telling about it is this is a species of animal that, owing to the configuration of their mouth, cannot possibly blow a bubble. Nevertheless, Hershey's has made a success of it. So, as to the verdict, spider eggs and bubble yum, exactly wrong. All right. However, here's a little verdict plus. I want you to consider the fact that if you're really worried about eating insect parts, eggs, bodies, whatever it might be, bubble yum is the least of your problems. Here's an article from Scientific American in 2013, completely unrelated to the bubble yum rumor. I hate to break it to you, but you already eat bugs. We all, in terms of the safety and quality of our food, owe an enormous amount to the Food and Drug Administration, which was founded as part of the Pure Food and Drugs Act in 1906. Gone a long way to getting bad things out of our food. But although they regulate the maximum amount of insect parts that can be in our food, The number ain't zero. For example, the FDA specifies that in spinach, there can be a maximum of 50 aphids, thrips, and or mites per 100 grams of it. And with the hops that go in beer, there can be no more than 2,500 aphids per 10 grams. That is 5% of the total weight of the hops that go in your beer can be aphids. So if you're really that worried about eating insect parts, I suggest you confine yourself to a diet that consists exclusively of bubble yum. Okay, bonus legend. Are there any urban legends about Keith Urban and John Legend? I couldn't resist this one. I looked it up, and strangely enough, you look up Keith Urban, John Legend, there are pictures of them together. There's one. They were doing some concerts related to coronavirus. But are there actually any urban legends connected with them? Well, the answer is yes and no. Let's look at John Legend first. There was a rumor spreading around that he refused to play at Donald Trump's 2016 inaugural. That's true. How about Keith Urban? Well, it's a little more complicated and a little more interesting. The legend surrounding Keith Urban was that he held a concert where he said at one point, "Is there anyone here who's Canadian?" And when a few people raised their hand, he asked them to leave. Supposedly, this was because these people because Canada had not adequately supported some aspect of U.S. policy at that particular time. This is a legend that has gotten a retread with many different people over many years. It started first time, as far as I know, when it was said that John Denver asked who the Seventh-day Adventists were in the audience and told them to leave. Later, Phil Collins asked if anyone was Jewish and asked them to leave. And now the most recent, perhaps, unless it's been retreaded since then, is Keith Urban with Canadians. It wasn't true with any of those other guys, and it's not true here either. One of the most significant things undercutting this rumor is that 1 week before the concert at which Keith Urban supposedly asked all the Canadians to leave, he himself had performed a concert in Canada. So thanks for listening. Please like us below, comment below, and we would love it if you would join our Facebook group, James Michael Riley Studios. So for today's presentation, I want to thank SlidesGo, who created the template for this particular PowerPoint. I want to thank the Business Standard of India, New York Times, Lifesavers, Nabisco, the Hershey Company, Scientific American, and our friends at Snopes.com. I don't mean they're actually my friends. I just mean they're a source I trust. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week for Jim's Friday Freakout.